Hello, and welcome to Revive and Rise. This is your host, Melody Parrish, and I have a very special guest with us today, Angela Harvey. She's a social worker, facilitator, speaker, and author of Poetic Alchemy, which is a poetry self help book. And it's a book where she publicly talks about her trauma and transformation. So, wow, Angela, thank you so much for coming with speaking to us.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. I mean, like literally, I'm excited that you reached out. It was very, just, yeah, I'm happy, happy.
Great, great. And so we wanted to touch base with you and talk about your expertise and what you have for us. This is African American History Month. And so we wanted to talk about mainly about racism and trauma and whatever you think or you feel that's important there. And maybe afterwards, after you sharing your story and your thoughts, you can tell us some strategies or things, important things that can help us and our listeners.
Alrighty then. Thank you. I'm again just excited to have this conversation and excited that you would allow me to. I'm been obsessed with unmuting voices for a very long time, and so very excited to be able to speak specifically to racism and trauma. And this is a great time to be talking about it in that all that is happening with the world. And I have to be transparent, letting you and letting the listeners know that I'm in protective custody for the most part and just shielding myself from the daily traumatic things that are happening in the country, with the government, and in some of these communities. And that piece definitely speaks to trauma. I think about trauma now and I think about the everyday um, impact of the things that are being done and said and things that we see and how traumatic that is. Now you intersect that with being African American. Um, and one of the things that I want everybody to be clear about is that um, if in fact you had to put a weight to it, and I think this is a very great way to be able to describe what it feels like, because I do know and do have understanding that there is no way that someone could know impact of all the things that have happened in these last 400 plus years in the African American community. Because if you're not a part of that community, it's very, very difficult to have an understanding. But I also want to be clear that not having an understanding does not relinquish anyone from having empathy and compassion, care. And so if we put it like this, let's just say that you're born a black or brown kid, there's 50 pounds of weight that you pick up. You have to carry with you every single day, no matter what. You put on top of that anything that might happen in your childhood, and there's another 50 pound of weight that you carry with you. You don't get the opportunity to leave home without it unless there is specific focus on healing, so in my head, um, healing should absolutely start to happen as soon as you're born because and a lot of us that are from uh, households did get some of that where, it was told to you or spoken to you that you're going to need to do something, but it wasn't healing. It was absolutely information that actually gave you more weight. You're going to have to be better. You're going to have to work 3 times as hard. Expect to be overlooked. Expect to be discriminated against. Expect not to take it, but know that it's going to happen. That's another 50 pounds. People are in families that are unable to cope from past trauma. Most parents, no matter what color you are attempting to reconcile their own childhood while trying to raise children. Imagine then them carrying 20 pounds or 200 pounds from their stuff and then attempting to raise kids. That in and of itself can cause trauma to the individual. And then you go out into this world, begin to see and feel through the school system, through society, through your church, through the community, through the television, through the internet, through the, I mean, so literally 10 pounds here, 10 pounds here, 10 pounds here. And it doesn't make a difference then how much you weigh, you're overweight, you're burdened with trauma. And having to, I, I, I used to hear people say, and I still hear people say that, well, the opportunity's there. Just, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Um, Imagine that you're not given boots. Imagine if you are given boots and you finally do get some boots and there's no straps to be pulled up. Um, and if you think about that visual, either walking barefoot in a place that has all this glass and stones, things of that nature, or you're walking with boots that are probably too big or too small and you're not having straps to pull up. Racism is trauma. And so again, get it no matter what. I know for my own self, I raised in a black household with a black mother, single black mother. Had a younger sister who has since passed away, and my father was not present, but I did have the support and the presence of my father's family. He wasn't present in the home, but he was present in my life. Um, and then I remember because I was an overweight kid, trauma. We'll identify the trauma as we go along. I was an overweight kid, trauma, so I'm the last person to be picked on the anybody's kickball team. I'm also so self-conscious of my body. I elect to not to get dressed for gym and just take the F, trauma. Um, my mother saw that I was beginning to cut school, which she did not know then, doesn't know now, that I was being bullied,
Mhm.
trauma. Um, Called fat. I'm in a school with all African Americans, so there wasn't the racial piece, but you absolutely got all those other little things that cause trauma as well. So then you leave with no self esteem. So I began, in order for me to get in where I fit in, as they say, I began to cut school, and I was in junior high, cutting school. We were a bus at the time, so cutting school, and we're going from the west side. We're getting on a bus and traveling all the way to the east side to go sit in a high school study hall. I'm in junior high, and then taking a bus all the way back to the west side, and let's just say it's 30 miles on the bus to get back on the school bus to travel back home. And my mother found out. Oh boy, trauma.
Yeah.
A different type of trauma, but trauma nonetheless. And her response to that, besides the punishment that I got, was to move us to a place called Streetsboro, Ohio. Um, and in Streetsboro, Ohio, unbeknownst to us, is a town that's very small um, and all white. We were the only, my sister and I were the only African American at that time in junior high and the high school. I was going to 10th grade, then going to 7th grade. I ended up being the only African American in the high school because my sister elected to go to a vocational that took her to a different school. Um, and in that space and place, I can honestly tell you that there was a lot of things I was not aware of. I thought it was very kind that my social studies teacher elected not to talk about slavery, social studies. I thought, how nice is that? Not
Mhm.
thinking at all. Here we are now fighting for that story to be told. And I was at the time, and I can imagine if I could talk with him, I'm sure uh, it did come from a place of care. I don't think it was like, oh, let me not tell the story. I think um, in his mind, he might have been protective. Keep in mind, this is their first true exposure to an African American person. I mean, I answered questions for all of the race,
Oh, wow.
about my hair, about my dress, about Cleveland. People thought that if you walked into Cleveland based on the news, you were going to be shot at. I mean,
Yeah.
there was so many things, trauma. So here I am carrying all the weight of the community. of the city that I'm from with me every day. And in order to get in where I fit in, and in order for me to feel good about myself, I absolutely attempt to acclimate as best I can to
Mhm.
assimilate, to get, literally start dressing the way they dress and talking the way they talk and all those types of things. And then when I would go to Cleveland on the weekends, because that's where my family was from, and it's about a 40-mile, 45-minute ride from Monroe to Cleveland.
Mhm.
Um, I would get there and they would want to know, why are you talking white, trauma?
Mhm.
Why are you acting white, trauma?
Mhm.
Um, and so, but again, so know that I didn't feel the weight of that until I wasn't in it because
Yeah.
I was so busy focused on not focusing on it. I spoke with a friend this morning and we're both talking about electing to be numb just
Right.
so we're not consumed with feeling all of the other emotions that come with everything that's happening in the world and being I know for myself, I'm in disbelief. I don't believe it's happening. Um, some years ago, my thought was that I would rather be in a place where I knew that I was liked and
Mhm.
not people not wanting to be a part of, because at least I would know where to go and grow. Like,
Mm.
the people that are your friends, people that are, not just talking to you, those types of things. But literally as I'm given this that's the way things are going. There's been millions of people now activated to be racist on purpose and unapologetic. Who are no longer silent, who
Mhm.
are n- no longer feel any remorse about saying what they want to say and acting how they want to act. I happen to be living in a community where this just came up. They mow the lawns, do the lawn care, landscaping on Thursdays, and I have fur baby. Every time I walked there and I would be working on Thursday, they would stop and not not blow anything or not. And I promise you, it felt like the day after the election, I happened to have a patient that I needed to do, and it was the first time that I'd ever been not on my A game. I When I facilitate knowledge in a
Mhm.
professional capacity, I'm bringing my whole A game. That's my ish. That's where I do. And I was so thrown off my game because I was just it. It was just what you did not want to hear, and that was now people. I didn't. It wasn't specifically about who was the president, but now there have been people activated to believe that it's okay for someone else to be treated differently. They are different from you, and to me, that's what is happening.
Mhm.
Um, I do know that it comes from fear. Hate comes from fear. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited about doing this podcast because when you know people's story, it absolutely is a little bit more difficult. Not impossible for you to hate on them, but it's a little bit more difficult when you know pieces of their story. That's why I believe that shared stories save souls. I believe in unmuting our stories. I believe that our stories are for us to speak and for
Mhm.
people to be able to grow from those things. Um, I ended up leaving that high school and going to college. And in my head, I absolutely lived a pretty. In my head, it was ba- balanced. I'm not one to ever say that I don't see color because challenge with not seeing color is that you don't see my uniqueness.
Right.
You just you. I want you to see color. We want you to see color.
Mhm.
That's not for wanting you to feel sorry for, but be clear that I am different. But it doesn't make me less than. It never has. And I believe that's some of the unspoken the hate isn't because we're different and less than. The hate, I believe, comes from us being uh greater and equal to.
Absolutely.
Nobody talks about that.
No, no. And that's the thing, right? If you're if you're equal to, then the person that's insecure with themselves feels like they have to attack you. And I think that's where a lot of the hate comes from is these people feel so insecure and fearful for themselves and who they are, so they have to attack others. Would you
Mhm.
agree?
I absolutely agree with that. And keep in mind, another thing that's not talked about in out loud is the resiliency of people who are oppressed. I'm not just equal to, I'm equal to coming back from a deficit, coming back from people not wanting to educate my community, people not wanting to give us equal pay, people not wanting to give us equal housing, people not wanting to give us benefits, people not wanting to give us the benefit of the doubt, people not, all of those things. I'm equal to in spite of, which makes me more of a threat. We
Absolutely.
don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. There are people that I don't know that I know people personally that hate on people that are different. And I'm saying people that are different because I don't want anybody listening to this not to believe that this could be a black story, it could be a Jewish story, it could be a fat girl story, it could be a woman story, it could be a black man story, it could be anybody that is different. And white men can absolutely tell the same story with a different spin because we all know what it's like to carry trauma. And this is just the trauma of racism. We're not talking about childhood trauma, which could equal neglect, abuse. I'm a social worker. I've seen all of this neglect, abuse, sexual childhood trauma, mental illness, adult children of alcoholics or dysfunctional. I mean, literally, all of these things trauma, 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 trauma. And it's heavy. It's heavy and unfortunately you're so used to it, you're used to the burden, but then when somebody else gives you another thing, something else happens and you don't quite know where you're going to put it because it takes everything you have just to wake up and go to work, to have the passive aggressive used to be underlying racism, now it can be just blatantly discriminatory. Our government has given every company in the United States permission to not include, not diversify, and not be equal. And I think people didn't realize that that didn't just mean black and brown folks.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
meant disabled folks. It meant women. It meant neurodivergent. It meant all of the people that are not white men. So if nothing, now is a absolutely a let's call it a lesson in what DEI is, because I think people were made to believe that DEI just meant the inclusion of black and brown people in spaces and places that people weren't didn't want them. And now they see that that's not at all the story. That's
Yeah.
not what DEI is. Um, I trekked through undergrad. Really, I was the RA, so I mean, I went to Cleveland State University. I've always known how to get along with others, and that's the other thing that we can talk about: the racism and just people being separate. I've gone in places and space and looked around and not seen anybody that looks like me. I don't know how often that's a white experience where they go in places and there's nobody far and wide that looks like them. I look at school boards and companies still to this day with an all white board, school board. You're educating black and brown kids, and it's an all white this and all and and n- not to not to judge anyone because nobody most people that were not oppressed were raised to look for and be and want to include things that were different. No. So a black me as a black woman going into a place and being the only black is almost something I could say that I'm used to. I've been the only white in the whole school district. We were one of three black families out of 178 housing development in Las Vegas. I was grown at that time. I've been worked at United Healthcare where I was the only African American in my department. Caucasian folks don't know anything about that trauma.
Yeah. And that's like it, you know, that's like television and everything. And you know, I was reading a story that was like that was from, you know, decades ago, but still they were like, I dreamt of all of these different neighborhoods and different lives of these white kids that were pumped into my television because
Mhm.
there was no representation of anything else.
Right.
Did you feel that way?
I because I was always aware, because my mother worked for Ford, and so we were always around. There was always enough. My grandkids are both mixed race, so I've always been exposed. What was I mean, how else do you take a kid from Cleveland where you're around, you live in a black neighborhood, all those things. There was some transition, and by the way, my mother didn't have any conversations with us about this. She
Mhm.
didn't sit down and go, "Okay, this is how this is gonna be." Why? Because she goes to work every day and she does what she does without pause, without question, without thought. And so she didn't think to give or to expose or to empower her children to be able to go and do this other thing or what it might be like. And so we literally had to make a decision: either you get in or not. And my sister had a struggle because my sister, to the day she died, she was no shit taker.
Mhm.
She was not getting ready to tolerate a whole lot of anything. Um, and I, on the other hand, that was probably the beginning stages of the formation of my codependency trauma. Um,
Mhm.
that okay, what do I do to make everybody happy? What do I do to make everybody happy? And you best believe if I could have gotten a degree, I would absolutely you would be calling me Dr. Angela Harvey. I would have a PhD in tap dancing and making sure that everybody else okay. And so I did not have the experience, and I would love, this being a conversation, to know that in those spaces and places, and I asked when I do my 40-year class, we did our 40-year class reunion. Yep, 84 years since I've been out of high school. Anyway, when I asked them for the 35th, did did your family have any conversation about, the black girl at school or da 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 or anything like that? Most of them no, and those that would say anything could say that their parents were racist. Lots of houses I couldn't have gone in. They were raised in racist households to believe they were better than. There were some of them that were uh, uh, told that it was some type of experiment having that school. I had two different people out of my class of I think there was 134 of us at the time, um, and I wasn't just in the school. I was in the band. I was on the journalism team. I was on the track team. I was an office aide. People knew who Angie Harvey was. But let me tell you how um, not connected to the trauma of racism I was. One of my best friends in high school called me Nig, and I thought nothing of it.
Oh,
Not only that, I can remember my teacher, Mrs. Stoner, heard that and he pounded on his desk and he said, "Get out of my classroom." And I'm like, "What is going on?" Like, I'm the person saying, like, "No, no, no, he didn't mean anything by that." Another friend of mine a picture of me playing the spoon. I thought nothing of that. My teacher, the same teacher, by the way, saw that and was livid. I had no idea in my mind that this was something that was considered racist. I had no idea that it was that, that the joke was on me. That the joke was on me. And
Wow.
unfortunately, I don't think these days my grandkids, your grandkids, won't have the luxury. Right now, I really and truly consider it a luxury because I could see myself not having gotten through high school, going on to college, had I known. Kids these days don't have the luxury to be um, numb and absent-minded from race. This country is not giving us the opportunity not to know that we are. I remember watching a movie when they talked about enslaved people. They spoke about them being, and this was the thought, and probably still the same thought. Some people say that we were domestic animals, and yeah, I happen to be a dog owner now, and I wouldn't dare treat my dog like they did slave. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and what's even more interesting is that a lot of this is just coming to me, and I promise you, Melody, if I could make myself numb and not feel it. I don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV. You can imagine why.
Yeah.
Um, but I instantly knew that I couldn't carry the weight of the news. I couldn't carry the weight of the hate. I couldn't carry the weight of the discrimination. I couldn't carry the weight of the blatant disrespect. I couldn't carry the weight of
Mm.
those things. Um, and I still don't have a TV. I didn't know, I didn't even know everybody that was running for president until it was 3 months before the election. I kept myself that removed,
Mm.
protective custody on purpose so that I could be empowered to do what I'm supposed to do. Because now, I always thought that we always needed, everybody needed therapy. Now I know that it's a requirement. Now I know that we should be implementing things in school systems, which has been so difficult to do. There should be things that happen because people now have unleashed what was unspoken and given people permission and to show it and to implement it. Um, and it's it's beyond words, beyond words. Um, that people could be so. The first word that comes to mind is ignorant, and that's not me being judgmental, but I know about myself. It's very easy. I did not like cabbage growing up as a kid. I could not stand cabbage. It was green and looked looking like I don't want any cabbage. I didn't
Mm.
know about cabbage. I didn't know how, and I used to love collard greens, but I had no idea how close cabbage was to the family of this particular vegetable. I didn't know the story of the cabbage.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it tastes like. I didn't, but I could say that I hated it. I hate cabbage.
Mm.
I hate cabbage. That was me not knowing or me not wanting to know. And like you said earlier, if in fact I'm insecure, and most of us are, if I'm insecure and been made to feel that, hmm, I've watched these people rise even when we pick them, even when we enslave them, even when we hate on them, even when we discriminate against them, even when we spit in their faces and I
Mm.
watch them rise. Oh, that alone makes me insecure because that alone makes you stronger than me. Because
Yeah.
most people will tell you, if most Caucasians were real and kept it 100%, they would tell you none of them would click their heels 3 times and get our life.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know, uh, you know, they talk, people talk about white fragility, And it's totally true. I mean, look at COVID. We, all these white people just, you know, they they were just so angry about wearing a mask to help protect other people. I mean, can you imagine if they dealt with something that y'all deal with every single
Re-
day? You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And but they would take our color, not the consequence of the color, but they're gonna go get tan.
Oh yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
mind the music. They
No.
don't mind us being able to play sports for them with them. They wouldn't mind that ability to be able to be da, 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 but they would not want the life and time of an African American
Absolutely.
person. They would not. And 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 you just said something that was very pivotal about COVID. And again, that was something that in my head, the world was being shut down so that we could all reset and recalibrate. But we were not prepared for those people who were not known to have mental health and illnesses. We were not prepared to see it in our spouses. We were not prepared to see it in our families. We were not prepared to see any of those things. And it took a lot of people off guard. And when people don't want to know things, feel things, see things, say things, they can do they can do the most horrendous things attempting not to not to feel. I went to the African American history. I would love to be able to tell you that I was able to get through how beautiful it is, but I want you to know that I started at the bottom of the museum. Have you ever been to the museum?
No.
Well, to go to the bottom of the museum, meaning you start where we were brought over, and so it shows you the bottom of the ship, and it shows you the living condition, and it shows you the shackles. Melanie, they weren't just shackles for adults; they had shackles for kids, and they had shackles for babies. I went from that display to a display that I've seen movies. Um, One of the reasons I decided not to spank my daughters because I saw Roots. I'm like, well, who? How inhumane is that to beat another human? But I saw the actual whip that was used, that people use to hit another human being, that most people wouldn't use to hit animals that they had. And tears began to fall, and I got very, very emotional. And I can remember going the opposite way of the people, just wanting to get someplace to get out. Like I couldn't. That's the furthest I've gotten in that museum. Let's say the museum is 10,000 square feet. I don't know that that's the truth. I literally couldn't do a whole thousand. I would just blown away, blown away, blown away. And for that type of trauma, that type of trauma stays with you. So some of the weight that we carry is weight that we're just going to have to carry. But I do believe as a therapist, we we can manage trauma to have a productive and successful and thriving life. But then there's another piece then that goes with this racism where we don't go get help. So you carry this trauma, this weight of this trauma and all of the things that your parents carried, that you carry and that your kids carry, and then you don't feel like for many reasons, including racism, that this thing is something that could potentially help you. I still go in spaces and places of healing, and I'm the only Black. I'm currently going through some growth, just learning more about myself in a space, and I attend these meetings, and I guarantee there's not ever more than 3, and in many cases, there's none of us volunteering to go get help, whether it's from some of addiction or codependency or um, yeah, it's challenging, challenging. I do believe that I I do believe that is changing out
Mhm.
of necessity. It also used to be, Melody, that you couldn't find a true statistic on African Americans and suicide because we were raised to take and handle and lift a lot of the weight. I remember when we were going to school, there was I knew of in each school episode I had there was at least one person, and we never had to ask what color were they. Now they actually have statistics. We're actually um, seeking to leave this space and place, and I guarantee you that trauma and racism is behind it.
Yeah, I write a little piece in the NAMI newsletters,
Mhm,
South Carolina, and what they asked me to write uh, this month on disparities in African Americans and mental health, and
mm,
it is amazing. Like you said, there's just not that many statistics, and when there are statistics, there's such disparities. Um,
mhm.
and why do you think the articles I read commented that, you know, African Americans don't seek help because they feel like, they can rely on their families, or they can rely on church or their communities rather than these strangers. But what do you think is the real reason that African Americans aren't?
Well, guess what? When you were when our ancestors were enslaved, who did they go to? They went to their family and they went to their faith. They didn't, the people weren't saying, "Hey, I need somebody to come in and talk to my enslaved people because I think they're having a hard time." So when you learn to lean on only your faith and only your family trauma, and to look at side-eyed at the rest of these people trauma, that's the way I'm going to teach my kids. Like, hey, I mean, that let go and let God, and God will handle. God could work it out. God could, whether that is true or not. Because I'm definitely not getting. I'm not going toe to toe with anybody that believes all of that. But what I am going to say is that racism implemented those beliefs that were passed down. So not only do I have to, the one thing about change, and the reason that people don't like change and what's different, because I actually have to move out what I think and feel, and I have to trust. Another word, people that walk around with this much trauma, the first thing they will tell you is, I don't trust anybody. In order for you to sit down with somebody of any color and disclose your deepest, darkest stuff, you have to trust. Racism keeps the African American community from trusting anybody we don't absolutely need to trust. And now it's going to get even worse because we could have the illusion that if we got to a place, especially when we were able to get Obama in the White House, there was the illusion that, see, if you just do, if you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you know, by the boots that you don't have and the straps that you don't know,
Mhm.
you can just pull yourself up by those things. You too can be the president of the United States. But here's the challenge. Almost in every case, you could think about the way somebody was raised and what they were raised to believe. I also do believe that there are things that are that we were born with, because some of us have the tenacity and the wherewithal that surpasses environment, what it nature and nurture, that surpasses any of those things and elevates you to place and space. People like, I don't know how they didn't. I don't know how. Sometimes I feel like I don't know how I was able to escape. Many times there's many reasons why I shouldn't steal. Um, and that's what is passed down. That's what I know. So that's what I teach. And it's very difficult. You talk about um, what do they call it? I'm going to come up with it, but I'm not going to pause myself. Being able to generational um, um, trauma passed down from place to place to place, just like the cooking. There always is a story they used to tell, and they ask somebody, "Why do you always cook turkey?" I always cook turkey because my grandmother always cooked turkey. Da, 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 da. To that point, I remember going into a home because most of the people in my family were single parents. I had one aunt. My grandmother had my grandfather there, but I remember going into some of the houses of the people in my high school and going, "Your father lives with you?" That wasn't what I knew. And so people grow with what they know. And many people that don't grow to see anything different don't ever get to that place. I had a sister that just did not understand. I'm a therapist. Did not understand, Angie, what would be the purpose in me bringing out? Because it's one of the things I tell my clients, I need you to go in that closet, where you put all this stuff and get that box, where you put all your deepest, darkest stuff, the stuff that weighs you down, all your weight. I need you to go bring that out the closet and let's empty it. Let's just get it all out. My clients would tell me, "No, Miss Harvey, I'm not doing that." You know that's scary. Now to me, it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, somebody want to process my trauma. Wait a minute, I'm going to go get all my box and bring it back to you, Melody." But there's some people that would look at me as if I was like, no. There's some people literally that would never ever consider exposing themselves to be open. Third definition in the dictionary for open: be exposed and vulnerable to attack or question. Who does that? Not people that are walking around with 200 pounds of trauma, zero trust, uh, struggling to understand, because everything we're being asked to understand is discriminatory and traumatic, you know? And it's real. I wish that it wasn't. I think I lived half of my life believing that it couldn't be true, only to live these last decades that I might have on this earth to know, to know what it feels like. Um, I graduated from high school, went to college, and then moved to Las Vegas after I got my graduate and worked in say the name, I worked in a medical field at a very well known healthcare organization. And I will tell you that I think I shared already that I was the African American professional in my department. And when certain people saw me elevate beyond my job, I'm not just case management, social work case manager. I then began my entrepreneurial journey with, then it was called Let's Talk. Let's together acquire lasting knowledge. It has
Mhm.
now been transformed into Let's Talk University with Angie Harvey Speaks. I've written books, done movies. But when those people saw me elevate beyond just coming to work, just doing my job, me actually going out and asking to work 410 so that on the weekends I can go and I'm speaking at places across America, getting paid. And when I tell you that things changed, I began to be watched. Um, a new supervisor came in, and whatever they were told, it was clear they had been told that we got to keep our eye on this chick. Um, we moved. I had to move offices, and they kept. I was off that they but we had to pack up our boxes because we couldn't move boxes. They had to be moved by people. So left the boxes there. I wasn't there to actually be in the move, but my things were actually packed. They threw all of my belongings away, which included my degree, my social work license, my sonogram picture of my first grandbaby, my awards that I had gotten for being employee of the month. They threw all of my things away. They did not throw anybody else's away. They were kept in my supervisor's office. My things were thrown away. And it probably was the first time, and I couldn't understand why because I'm still codependent. So that means I'm still doing everything. I was the social worker that every VIP wanted to take care of their parents because I was working with seniors at the time. I was that chick, but I also was this other chick that dressed impeccably because my mother already said you dress like $1 million even though you don't have it. So I came dressed unlike everybody else. They would always say, "Well, Angie, are you going for an interview today?" You know, everybody want to know why I was dressed up. Hair always done when I had hair. Audience doesn't know I don't have any hair now. But literally always on my A game and a little bit above. So when I'm given this assignment to go and grow up the grown people, it's in addition to my full-time job. And the higher I got, the more I did. They even used me for my facilitation skills. But I guarantee you, there were certain people in power that did not like that. And they showed me. And they ended up moving me to an office where there were uh, two other people. And then, because they believed those people weren't ears for them, they moved me up front. Now, as a social worker, you have to do things that are classified, not classified, but HIPAA
Mhm.
regulated. I'm speaking with clients about their things. They moved me into the waiting room in a cubicle. So the only thing that's dividing between me and the people that's waiting in the waiting room is a partition. Because somebody in that department could watch me, know when I came in, know when I left, know when I took a break, know when I went on a home visit, know when I. And the last thing that happened, which was the last straw for me, because I had been at this job for 15 years, wasn't a new employee, and had not in 15 years I missed 4 days of work sick, and two of those I came to work sick, and they sent me home. I came to work every single day. My mother raised me. If I go to work, she would say, "If I have to go to work, you have to go to school." From 12th grade to kindergarten to 12th grade, I didn't miss one day of school.
Oh, wow.
My supervisor, I got a new supervisor, and she asked to see. That means I have to travel from one place to another via car. And she had papers where she had actually written me up. And I'm like, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, you were a no call, no show." Now keep in mind my track record. I come to work. But if I did no call, no show, why wouldn't you call your employee?
Yeah.
And yet, what she has in front of her is a piece of paper writing me up for a no call, no show because she made a decision that was something that could happen. What she didn't know is that I had asked all of my days, I would ask for way in advance because I knew when I was speaking. So I didn't take regular vacation days. I took vacation days when I knew that I was going to do other things. And I was out of town and I was off because I requested the time off. Didn't even take the opportunity to even look into that. But she took the opportunity to write me up.
Wow.
And I ended up leaving a job that I loved of 15 years, a major healthcare company. Um, and I will tell you, not one person, not one single person from that job called me. That's called a cult.
Yeah. Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so it's real. The it's real. It absolutely is a real thing, and I do believe that those people that could have those beliefs, I am open. It's a lot of people I don't like. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people I don't, there are people that vex my spirit. There's people that don't
Mhm.
acknowledge me. I get, but for you, for anyone to hate on and discriminate against a whole body of people, whether that's all the women, or whether that's all black men, or whether it's all black folks, whether it's all Jewish people, whether it's all Hispanics, whether it's all whatever it is, there's no way in the world that everybody did something to you. And in many cases, I have yet to understand why, except lack of understanding, insecurity. What the kids don't call it jealousy now; they call it jelly. Oh,
Yeah.
she's jelly.
Yeah, yeah.
And that jealousy is something that nobody's going to want to admit. You got to send under a lamp to get the color I am.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
You have to go get something injected in your lips to get the lips I got. You have to
Mhm.
do a whole lot of squats to get the behind that my mama gave me.
Absolutely.
We don't want to say those things,
Mhm.
but we can just say that they can't call us lazy. We built 9 times out of 10 what they sitting on or standing on. We built, whether
Yeah.
it was in a factory or our ancestors built. I mean, so
Mhm.
none of that is true, but I do understand indoctrination when that's the way you were raised and
Yeah.
you didn't see. There are many people who never left Streetsboro. The same people that graduated with me went to school there, they got their houses there, they got their families there. That's where they stay. So there's many people they just don't know. And that's why I tell people it's so important for us to tell our stories because it's harder to hate on people who know their story.
Absolutely. Or when you just humanize something. Because
Mhm.
like you said, people look at others like animals or objects. Now I think about what's going on with our immigrant population and how they're just being moved like they're pieces of dishware, Oh, well, can you take these people? You need to take these people. And they're from countries that they never even came from. It why are you gonna move somebody like that? And it's just that kind of thing. People
Mhm.
not thinking of humanity.
And that's a great word. Where would they have learned that? Those of us that had to acclimate had to learn it because we had to learn to respect those people in charge, respect those people of this particular color, respect those people who are at the head of something, respect your boss. The other side was not taught that. Never. So humanity means something different to other people. And they could and probably in their own spaces and places believe still that we are not human. And I'm not getting ready to bring religion into it, but that's one of the things I want to be clear about is that that same book was meant to suppress and oppress women, black folks, other people of color. That same book, people can find something in it to go, you're not,
Yeah.
and it's when I tell you baffling, it's not baffling. I do have an understanding. There's a part of me that wants some confirmation, that wants, but humanity and to be compassionate, those are learned behaviors. Where did they learn them? You were
Yeah.
not brought up in a household, specifically if you were brought up in a household to hate, dislike, and discriminate against those people who were different than you. You didn't learn it. It's very difficult because I work with adults. It's very difficult to undo something that's been done.
Yeah, I think that's part of the difficulty now is how do you unlearn something that's been drilled in your head and not just from your families but also from society as a whole. I was
Mm,
talking to a friend and it's like everything is subliminally
right,
projected, what even to the fact that, in movies and in television and in books, things that are white are always considered the hero. The
right.
the cowboys wear the white hats. The
Mhm.
hero wears, things that are white and light. And things that are dark are always the villain, and the
Mhm.
villain in the westerns wears the dark black cowboy hat and vest and everything. Even when you're talking about things, light is always good, and but
Right,
nobody ever thinks about the goodness and the beauty. I love night. I love
right,
looking at the stars and the moon, and just the to me, the blacker the night is, the better the night is. But a
right.
lot of people don't feel that way.
Because they don't know that things grow in darkness.
Absolutely, yes.
Things grow, things from plants to people grow in darkness. And so there's an appreciation at some point for that. But again, you have to want to be there. Just like with therapy. Just like you wouldn't want a podcast guest who didn't want to come and be on your podcast. Like, oh, Melly, I don't know. You be like, oh, maybe you can people have to want to be there. In order for me to want to be there, that means I have to right now in this country, there are probably more between whites and their family now. Because some of the family voted for the things that happened here and are okay with it, like go, white power. And then
Yeah.
there's other family going, oh my goodness, like what do you mean? Lots and lots and lots of discord. Because in order for me to be open to learning and growing, I have to be exposed and vulnerable to attack or question. None of that stuff sounds good. Exposed and vulnerable to attack or question. People don't want to be exposed. They doggone sure don't want to be vulnerable. They absolutely don't want to be attacked, and they are absolutely not going to let you question. You can't be open. You can't change. Because in order for change to happen, you have to bring your A game, and your
Mhm.
A game is you being able to be aware of the racist that you are. You have to acknowledge these are the things I've done and things. I'm in a 12-step program. We absolutely talk about making amends. There's some people that egos will not let them do that. Their families won't let them do that. Their careers won't let them do that. Their occupations won't let them do that. Their friendships won't let them do that. Because it means more to have stuff and people and things than it is to do the right thing. Because the bottom line for all of America was money. And anybody that is attempting to keep me from my money is disruptive, you
Yeah.
know? And so it would not surprise me is yeah, I would say none of it is surprising to me, but some of the things that I've heard are, but I have to be less surprised and more supportive. That's the place that I want to come from and being of support. And that support is going to look like me not assuming that everybody who is Caucasian voted for this to happen. Everybody that is African American uh, uh, believes that I'm worth something. I have to be supportive of my own self because in order for this, when I was in college, I really believed that there could be an end some of the racist things that would happen. But because it's so ingrained and like you said, subliminal in everything. And I'm not sure if you know, but this past week the Super Bowl happened. and people are talking about it everywhere. I don't have a TV, so of course I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I did go to YouTube and see the halftime show, and people are enraged, not just enraged by the message, because most people still most Caucasian folks and people that are not in African American or persons of color community still haven't gotten what we all know and see. But they're enraged that there was not a white on the stage. And I'm sure nobody, I'm not sure, like who was thinking about what, but both quarterbacks were African American. Both of the people that sung before the game were African American. And then you got at least 100 plus people, African American, on the field during halftime.
Mhm.
You got an African American female coach in the quarterback ring, and they did all of that in African American History Month. Oh, somebody's head gonna roll that they let that happen. You know,
Yeah.
somebody's head gonna roll, and people are upset about it, and they're simply upset that they were the people that want DEI to go away now want to be included. Because how
Mhm.
dare you do anything out our present?
That's a powerful statement right there, but so true. Um, yeah, yeah, and you know what was interesting to me, because I'm just so shocked that this has gotten so much rage and anger. Um, but what really hit me was when people talk about Serena Williams. And, at first it was, oh, this was a diss against Drake, whatever. But then they didn't realize what she was doing and what it was symbolizing. And, you know, that just broke my heart that she was having to do that. You know, the whole crip walk-in at
Yeah.
Wimbledon, and how that was just so derogatory and so
Mhm.
terrible, and then she felt like she needed to do it again and that she could do it again in that space.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and she herself said, "I would never have been able to do the crip walk like I did that night at Wimbledon." And it's just like you say, it's like you have to change who you are to fit into another space.
And every black and brown person in America knows what it's like to have to disengage from who they are truly, to engage with the people that they have to engage with, to make a living, to be able to be in certain spaces and places. And in my head, and I don't want to call it, but the consumerism and the colonization that has happened has made us so dependent that we're willing. I don't know how many people would be willing to take a bus every day for a year. Guess what? I got to take care of my family. I got to provide. People need da, 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 da. And it that's the best way to get people to. I was just saying to a friend that they they no longer need to herd us the way they did when our people were enslaved, because they're hurting us mentally. They don't need to hurt us physically. They can still have control, so that you can know that really not a thing until you have one of these. You're really not worth anything until you have one of these. When they don't know, it doesn't make a difference. I don't know what Obama could have did for those people that don't like black people. There's not anything that he could have done. But the same thing holds for the other side. I don't know what can be done now. Those people to say, wait a minute, even though my niece is losing her job, and she's not black, or your cousin is being let go from the, even though there's going to be people in their family, people that they know, that will lose rights and jobs and incomes, their minds and their lives, they will still stay dedicated to hate. And so trauma and racism is trauma and makes for a traumatic experience that we don't get to just elevate from. There's not enough money. If Serena Williams and half the people on that football field, surely Kendrick Lamar got more money than most any of us will ever see. If they still have to experience racism, that will let you know that not even money can buy you from something. That American dream, it had a house and it had a white picket fence. It might have had a car, it had a dog. It didn't have freedom. Nobody ever promised you freedom. And freedom is not what you are and you being able to be able to come and go. At some point they knew they could undo this because they've already got you dependent on this. After somebody sells you a anything that's illegal to elevate your mood, at some point they don't need to sell you on it because they know you coming back. Consumerism, trauma, you know, and know that I sit in places now, and I'm thankful that I have a mental freedom that can elevate me spaces and places like this. Not to say I don't experience it, but I'm able to manage my emotions so that I don't cause harm and chaos to myself and those around me. And right now, that's all we. But you have that mental freedom, freedom from bondage mentally is what has to happen on the black and brown side in order for this to be elevated. Because it's clear that when you give this much power to one person, and and that person can navigate. There was a movie that I watched. I can't think of the name, and they were transporting to uh, Jewish people were transporting this fellow who was a part of Nazi regime back to some place to go on trial or whatever. So they had him handcuffed, and he was laughing at her because the fella had to leave, and she was a little, intimidated by him. And he said he was laughing. Said, "What's so funny?" And he said that it only took one of us to herd and to control thousands. You're weak. You're weak. That's what's happening right now. Not
Absolutely.
that, not that we're weak. We're absolutely not our ancestors in that respect. But there's a weakness mentally. There's a weakness in the things that we possess. There's a weakness that will not let you be without something. You are a crutch on something that renders you weak.
Right. And
And
it's
that,
all about the mental. If you think, you know, that you're weak, then you'll act weak, you know, when really you're strong and powerful. But it's that
absolutely.
it can't, it just holds you down. And I think, and that's what oppression is, you know,
Hmm.
getting into that mind. Keep thinking about, I don't know, have you ever seen the movie Made in Manhattan? Well, it's with Jennifer Lopez, and
Hmm.
it's about her family, that her mom and family being, you know, in housekeeping in this hotels, and she says at one point, towards the end, she says, "I want to be a manager," and the mom says, you know, we're just housekeepers. That's
Mm.
what pays our bills. You can't be a manager. and you start thinking, and she's like, "Oh no, mom, I'm going to be. I'm going
Mhm.
to get you out of my head, and I am going to be." And I keep thinking about that. I grew up in rural South Carolina, where you always saw black and brown people that would be in that mindset that this is what we can do, and we can't do better
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, and so they didn't even try to do better because they were always oppressed. Like you
Mhm.
say, not they didn't even have boots to pick themselves up with bootstraps.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
what can you tell our listeners to kind of combat that?
First of all, you have to be the A game is the best thing that I can tell you. And the A game is to be aware. Be aware of self, be aware of what you think, what you feel, and what you believe. And if you have a desire to be different, that awareness has to happen. Other A in the A game is to acknowledge and accept, be able to acknowledge, yes, this is where I sit, this is where I stand, this is what I think, this is what I feel, this is who I am. And then being able to accept these things have had me be a certain way, act a certain way, do a certain thing, not do a certain thing, and then be able to take action. Got awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action. The action is pivotal, and the action doesn't have to be something sweeping. It could be something as little as you going, "Oh my goodness, I did just say this in front of this person," or I do feel these things. Where does this come from? That first acknowledgement, especially for someone was raised in a place to dispense hate or to be tolerant of things that are going on around you and not speak up. Because in every movement that we've ever had, and I say we as in women, we as in African American people, we as in the LGBTQ community, all of us took it, it took us, all of us, and something and somebody from these other places and spaces. So absolutely, there's something that can be done. That's the other thing. If you want to move a mountain and you don't know how to do it, go to where other people are moving that mountain. Find out where you can help. Listen to a story. Tell a story. Don't Definitely don't argue with people about what they think, feel, and believe. But you can be clear about what you think, feel, and believe. I believe being an example is the best way to sway people. To be an example of something good. I'm not getting ready to argue with anybody ever about what they think is right. Anything that is against and of detriment to another human being is wrong. There's not a right way about that. And being the example of that, absolutely what happens. But that self awareness is going to be pivotal because we, your listening audience, all of us, there are people watching us, and they usually look like our kids, our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, and what they see is a lot of times what they mimic. Both of my grandkids are what they would call white passing, but my daughter is Negro, and she is black. Comes
Mhm.
from a black mama with a black family, and having to teach them almost something a little bit different because they can be. I have a sister who is of mixed race. And I remember my father, my black father, calling and saying, can you please tell your sister that she can get so much further in life if she just act her color? Because my definitely white passing. And I remember jokingly saying, sure, Dad, put your white daughter on the phone and let your other black daughter tell her how to get further in life is to not put that she's African American on her job application, her school application. Yeah, hand her the phone. I'll tell her. One, I knew it to be the truth. And I may not have it, but if you can get it, my sister was just the opposite. If she could put a braid in her hair and put a fist in, black power, she was that chick. She literally was the president of the NAACP on Arizona State's campus. Like she went all in. So I would absolutely tell I want everybody out there listening to the sound of my voice to learn and grow from the story I just told you.
Mhm.
Because there is power in that. Um, and to be clear about where you stand, because soon and really soon, we're going to be divided by where we stand, and we're going to be judged by where we stand. But the only person that has to feel the impact of where I stand is me. And hate on no level. Racism is hate. Hate on any level is wrong. You know?
Mhm.
So I am so appreciative of you allowing me the space and the time to be able to have this conversation. Initially, I think I said I don't know what I'm going to say, and now I'm sitting like, okay, Angie, you said a lot for you not to know what you were going to say. Um, but passion is something that I absolutely believe in, and although I would absolutely tell people that I'm not a person. I have friends that absolutely are in the arena of this racist thing. And I deal with people on a different level. But the trauma that I know that is caused by racism, I see in every client I've ever seen. I've not just seen Black clients, I've seen white women really and truly are struggling in their home and in their job and in their community. Something when you're around people who tell you that you need to act a certain way to be around them. And we all of us are hating on those people, so you can't go be, having
Mhm.
cookies with them. And I do have an empathy because I don't believe anybody was one thing and then became a racist. I think that just the way things are embedded and ingrained in me, I do understand that people are having to come from a very deep and dark place of believing and knowing based on how they were raised, what they feel, and just doing the right thing isn't that easy.
Well, and like you said before, you have to want to. That's the thing. You have to want to change.
Absolutely.
And I really like your A game
Yes.
with all the different
A.
yeah.
Right. To be aware, acknowledge, accept, action, and I forgot the last A was which is aftercare. Know that you don't just click and something stays. Anybody in recovery will tell you aftercare is ongoing.
Yeah.
Aftercare is ongoing, and this has gotten to be such a powerful thing. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it or not. There's a 12-step program called Racist Anonymous.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yes, 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 yes. And kudos to, I mean, just like it takes an alcoholic or a codependent or a sex addict or a hoarder, it takes a lot of something to happen for you to get to a place where you're in a program like that. Those people that can bring their A game,
Mhm.
want to take action to after, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah. Mm. And some,
This has been great, and I thank you for being so open and honest with our listeners. It's
oh,
amazing.
been my pleasure for sure and for certain. And I only know how to be open. I only know how to be exposed and vulnerable to attack or question. And I only know how to be honest because honesty is the only thing I can rely on. What is the truth? Yeah. But I definitely appreciate you having me. And it has definitely been my pleasure for sure. And I'm glad that you wanted your audience to know from this mouth a little piece of story.
Yes, yes.
So kudos to you.
Well, thank you, Angie, and I really appreciate it. And where can people find more information about you and from you?
Oh, absolutely. My website is angieharvey.com. And on that website are all things growing grown. I do speaking, I do workshops, I do facilitation. I also have a book. I um, direct and wrote an award-winning documentary. I also have a coloring book, and I do classes. I do groups. I do keynotes. All of those things, but all those things are located on my website, Angie Harvey Speaks, and across the board, Angie Harvey Speaks on all social media.
All right. Well, thank you so, so much, Angie, and we appreciate it. And please, please, please come back anytime you want to. You're
Oh,
more
thank
than
you. I definitely thank you for having me, for sure and for certain. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work you're doing and
welcome.
getting it out there. People really and truly being able to revive,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, yes,
Sure.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and hit me up if you have any questions or you want to just talk. So, have a wonderful day and please remember you don't have to suffer alone.
Mm.
Thank you.